There's lots of challenger brands out there, very, very well funded, that will just take that market share from you.
The size of the bundle doesn't change, and that's to protect our own margins.
Essentially, it's the Amazon of subscription boxes.
Building or kitting those boxes all at the same time. You could have a very peaky kitting activity in the DC.
Try first, cancel at any time. All those kind of messages really help.
We know it's bigger, we know it's more expensive to ship, but we build that into the budget.
The cheapest delivery option doesn't really guarantee delivery time window.
I'm going to start off with David. Can you explain the concept of uOpen as a marketplace for subscription businesses? And does your model allow the economics for micro subscription businesses to work?
uOpen is a online marketplace dedicated to subscription boxes. Essentially, it's the Amazon of subscription boxes. We work with over 250 different subscription-based brands. They range from small 1 or 2 person startups right up to the likes of Loot Crate, Cohorted, recently with Birchbox. The way that we're different to lots of subscription box directories out there is that we're a marketplace, so the customer can discover a wide range of different boxes all on one platform, sign up and renew directly through the platform. For the benefit of brands, you're gaining additional sales plus the brand exposure to a very dedicated audience that are looking for various different subscriptions or gift boxes.
By representing multiple businesses, have you considered other areas where you can help all of these brands pooling their resources in logistics, for instance?
There is a bigger vision around uOpen. We've built our relationships up with fulfillment partners and packaging experts, and we are working with a select group of smaller merchants at the moment, really understanding the model and the process around that monthly experience. Getting everything pulled together in a tight window is quite a challenge. We're keen to look at things like next day delivery. Can we pull all our resources to essentially create more bespoke services to help the smaller independents grow?
Claire, from the perspective of a 3PL logistics provider, thinking about some of the things that David said there, how do you think that could work?
There's really interesting potential economies of scale there, or advantages through collaboration. One of the dilemmas that many subscription companies have is, do I fulfill on the month anniversary of the date that the customer first signed up? Or do I send out every month's box at the same time? How do I do that to manage the customer experience and the logistics team experience? Brands who might be very sort of young, focused, very Insta heavy, need to perhaps focus more on getting their customers to receive the box at the same time, because if that unboxing experience is posted online. But that means that you're building or kitting those boxes all at the same time, and you could have a very peaky kind of kitting activity in the DC. When you've got many brands working together with the fulfillment partners, you can kind of plan that kitting activities. Each brand has their allocated kitting or box preparation every month, but then there's a little bit of wiggle room maybe in late shifts or at weekends for doing ad hoc and emergency or special promo work, or Christmas gift boxes work, that kind of thing. So there's some potential there, but that by coming together, some of the issues of subscriptions in logistics can be smoothed out.
Sophie, I want to move on to you. Why did you choose subscription and sort of bundling the products as a selling model for your products? Was it to do with the economics of making it work, or was it around how you think the consumer wants your products?
Subscription for us was a very organic choice, just based on the nature of the product. So we're selling food for families to help feed their children. So that's a sort of daily need that doesn't go away. So knowing that kind of constant need, just really wanted to smooth out that journey for our customers. They don't have to keep logging back in to reorder. In terms of the actual size of the bundles, that was a sort of work in progress in the beginning, to find those right metrics where it does make sense for us to be shipping out. Our kind of default is every 2 weeks. We have some customers buying every week, some customers buying every 4 weeks, but the size of the bundle doesn't change, and that's just to protect our kind of own margins and picking up on what Claire said, the kind of cost of delivering these products to our customers.
Mike, what about you?
The problem we're fundamentally solving is met by a subscription model. And the question we first asked when we started Brushbox was, when was the last time you replaced your toothbrush? Lots of people don't know the answer to that question. You're supposed to change it every 2 to 3 months. Do people do that? Hell no. There is a problem in the fact that people aren't replacing their brush when they're supposed to. Hence why we first launched on a subscription-only basis. It fundamentally solved that problem. And we chose the bamboo because we realized the 3.6 billion plastic toothbrushes go into landfill every year, and we didn't want to be a part of that problem on top of the one we were solving. We started with subscription only. It's not without its challenges. So a subscription business is a little bit more, so you have fundamentally a higher customer acquisition cost associated with getting somebody to sign up for a subscription. It works on paper from a financial model. Obviously, one of the questions that often gets asked is, are you doing this purely for the financial recurring income? It's a yes and a no. As I say, it fundamentally works for our model. A toothbrush should be replaced every other month. I was relatively stubborn to begin with, being honest, saying we're only on subscription. But what I perhaps didn't take into account at the time was sometimes customers want to try something before they buy. And it's all well and good saying free trial, sign up, cancel anytime. So offering that one-time purchase was just something that fundamentally our customers were asking for.
What percentage of your revenue is subscription versus one-time? Is it the case that you want to convert more people from subscription to buying some other one-time products, or taking people from the one-time to subscription?
If you'd have asked me a year ago, 100% of our revenue was from subscription income. We actually tested something in circa April time and launched a year's supply of toothbrushes on a standalone landing page. And that was the first time we really gave customers the choice in terms of, do you want this on a one-time purchase or a subscribe and save? At that point in time, so for that test, 20% of customers came on subscribe and save. With a little bit more fine tuning on the targeting, that increased to 30%, and that's relatively consistent now. 2 months ago, relaunched our sort of core subscription site, if you like, where people can go in, pick their brush, their color, their style, add toothpaste tabs, add in any extras, etc. It's about 66% come on a subscription basis right from the off. We need subscribers to be able to upsell them additional products. So I would say that the focus is predominantly, or if we had to give an order of priority, it would be getting one-time customers to subscribers in the first instance. And then when we've got more volume, we could focus on getting subscribers to buy additional products. I mean, you need to do a little bit of everything, but if we had to put a priority on it, that would be the order thing.
And Lucy, that's something that you do in Birchbox as well, because you have the subscription and also the one-time purchase products. Do you allow customers to pull their deliveries? If somebody does order a one-off item, it will come at the same time as their subscription in order to create those delivery, fulfillment and sustainability efficiencies.
We launched this initiative, which we called Ship with Box, about 2 years ago, and we started it as a trial. We actually did it across all of our markets. We did it in the US and in France as well. And we did it as a trial, so we didn't offer our full catalogue of shop products. We just picked specific ones so we could scale up and test the logistics of it as well. What we found during that trial was the demand was low. The value that we were getting from it in terms of sales was not worth the sort of logistical effort. But it's in our strategy again for next year. So starting in 2021, we will trial it again, but this time we feel it's important to offer the full range of products. Yes, in terms of efficiencies and boosting shop sales, but for us, one of the objectives as well is to really kind of align our two businesses, the subscription side and the e-commerce side, because we're sort of known for subscription as Birchbox, and we obviously now working on growing the shop and growing that engagement, and this will really help our customers to see us as sort of one.
And thinking about the customer experience when it comes to delivery, one of the things Amazon used to do is offer £1 off digital services for Prime subscribers in order to incentivize them really to accept a later delivery date. And I assume that was so that they could time the deliveries so that the drivers were going to the same area at the same time. Again, it makes it more efficient. So what are your thoughts on that?
I've seen, for example, like Sainsbury's do it, cheaper delivery slots where they have multiple deliveries going at that time or to that place. So it's known as a sort of green delivery slot. And I think that's an interesting concept as well, with the kind of key theme across all businesses is sustainability. And one of the sort of ongoing issues we have with subscription is that we bill all of our subscribers on the first of the month, and we then have a relatively demanding customer who we've taken their money and they're expecting to receive their product as soon as possible. I think that would be a challenging concept on the subscription side of the business, but certainly something we could offer in the e-commerce side with the sort of one-time product purchase.
Laetitia, Lucy just touched on it there, like the customer expectation in terms of the time that they will be getting their subscription box. So you help brands go cross-border, so to ship to international customers. Am I right in thinking that one of the advantages of shipping cross-border, if you're doing subscription, might be that you can guarantee a delivery date to consumers because you know exactly when you will be sending out the boxes, so you can better time it better?
You can time it better for sure, but it's not necessarily a guarantee to have, the delivery promise at the same time for everyone in that country. You need to also take into account the demographics of the country. For Australia, it's a big country, very big country, but a small population relatively to the country. So you have actually bundles of areas where, there is a very small percentage of the population. And then you have actually huge gaps of delivery times. At APG, we offer a 4 to 7 working day delivery time for most of the population in Australia from the UK. It doesn't apply to the remote areas where, they can wait up to 20 days, 25 days. I worked with some subscription businesses in the US. They were more concerned by the cost of the delivery. So they would actually, in some cases, choose the cheapest delivery option, which again doesn't really guarantee the delivery time window.
I want to move on to sort of customization and just ask Sophie, how are you managing that? Because I noticed you offer customers to get in touch if they have different preferences. So how will you manage that as you scale the business?
It's something that we're currently building into our tech. At the moment, we do it all manually, which is hugely time consuming. We are actively discouraging the customization. We're encouraging our customers to see us as, we're here to support you with the full plan, with the meal plan that we're designing based on your child's age, based on where they are likely to be developmentally, and then building out in our tech an ability for them to customize the boxes directly. It is something that we're also working on, providing more kind of resource and information around the food that we're providing. And that sort of lends itself well to baby food in particular. We are working effectively with palettes that haven't experienced lots of flavors. And we're at a stage where we're really encouraging parents to help their children with the developmental aspect of teaching their children to have positive associations with food. And a lot of that is reintroducing foods that they may not like. It is reintroducing flavors that are maybe a bit different. Whilst we are kind of building into our tech, for the most part, we're also really going deeper on the kind of please trust us as experts to help feed your baby.
How far in advance are your boxes planned? What does the internal process look like in terms of making sure that the boxes are editorially sound for the consumer, but also comprising of a size and weight that makes the fulfillment possible?
We would start to kind of source our products for the boxes about 6 months in advance, and then we'd start to look at packaging about 3 months in advance. After that, in terms of planning the final assortment, about 2.5 months, 2 months before. What we do is we have a look and feel meeting with lots of our different teams. So it would include our sourcing team, operations, customer service, marketing, and we all sit down in a room or virtually at this time to look at the products and see what makes up that assortment. We would review products versus the theme, size impressions per product, constraints, so that's the personalization element, what products can go to each subscriber or cannot based on their preferences and their beauty profile. We will also at that point test in terms of size and fit in the box or whatever the packaging may be. In terms of kind of compromises and that kind of thing, we've had a lot of learnings over the years. We have our sort of standard monthly box, which is always the same. And then we will try and do special packaging moments a couple of times a year. So that might be a tin or a bag or something a little bit different. We'll do something different for Christmas always. And we have learnings there in terms of when we come to plan that fulfillment, for example, in a bag format, the QC of during that fulfillment is a lot more difficult to try and check 5 or 6 sample products in a bag versus in a box, and that might then require some extra cost because they need an extra person on the line to do that QC. And there's a balance because we also want to be the most innovative and creative with our packaging, constantly be offering something new to the subscriber. And things like where we do the advent calendar once a year at Christmas, so we know that's going to weigh more, we know it's bigger, we know it's more expensive to ship, but we build that into the budget, and it's obviously worth it to have that real exciting moment.
We'll move on to acquisition and retention of customers. Sophie, start with you. What does success look like for you in terms of retention of subscribers?
We're looking to really support parents throughout the weaning journey. We want to be onboarding them when their children are just starting solids, so say with around a 6-month baby, and accompanying them throughout to toddlerhood until they've gone to nursery. That to us is our objective that we're working towards. It's how we approach our NPD. It's how we're approaching our product offering in general. We are quite strict about how we acquire customers. Having a sort of background as a completely bootstrapped company, we aren't giving up on the idea that we want to be breaking even on the first acquisition. Yeah, we're looking to keep people on for at least 6 months plus.
And the same question to you, Mike. What does success look like in terms of customer retention for you?
Customer retention is arguably everything, and it's one of the most unsexy parts of the subscription business. Everyone focuses on, or you've got all of this help, people approaching you, all the different tech about acquisition, whereas the retention is that leaky bucket model, isn't it? In terms of it's all well and good how quickly you get people in, but if you can't keep them, that will kill your subscription business. And to simplify it, as long as lifetime value on a profit basis exceeds customer acquisition cost, so super simple, then that's a win. In reality, however, you've got fixed costs on top of that. If you're growing, if your staff's increasing, then you need to take that into account. Even more complicated by the fact that your lifetime value may be averaged out on 9 months, then maybe 12 months, maybe 18 months. So it's all well and good your customer acquisition cost being less than your lifetime value, but you've obviously got this 9, 12, 18-month window where you're losing money on every single customer. Just lifetime value alone exceeding customer acquisition cost isn't enough. It needs to be at least 1.5, 2x to be a sustainable sort of high growth possibility for the subscription side of the business. Families, for us, are more expensive to acquire as customers, but have a considerably higher lifetime value. If we were to just let Facebook do its thing to get our customer acquisition costs as low as possible, to optimize to that extent, it inadvertently pushes out parents because they're harder to acquire. It's the lifetime value that's important, that families, for example, do have a better retention and are more valuable to us as a business longer term and are more aligned with what we're trying to do as well.
Stelios, I'm interested in what the search data might reveal in terms of how big the market is for subscription enthusiasts. So these are the people like David's customers who actively seek out different subscription boxes.
The market for subscription has really grown the last few years. So there's an increase of 102% year on year in terms of like people searching for specific subscription, core generic terms. And to Google, they're predicting that in December, obviously seasonality, there's going to be over 10 million searches for subscription box. But we still have these two audiences. There's one that knows all about subscription. You still have another big percentage of people that are actually, or users that are actually searching for a product or a specific issue, like a toothbrush. And then they will kind of like find out after that about the subscription model.
And what would your advice be in terms of paid media for a subscription business, like using terms like cancel anytime and buy one off and making sure that people know exactly what it is that they're getting when they click? So, because as well as wanting people to click, you also don't want people to click who won't be interested.
It needs to be tested. It really depends on the brand, it really depends on the product. The great thing with Google now is that you can actually have different layers of messaging depending on the user. So for example, if someone has been to your website before, you can have a different messaging. So they know about your brand, they know you're doing subscriptions, so you can actually use that. Using try first or kind of like cancel at any time, all those kind of like messages really help with your, first of all, you don't waste your money on users that you don't want to attract. It helps you kind of like understand what works on a keyword level and on an audience level, so that you can understand what sort of with the combination of ad copy with keyword and audience. Looking at your click-through rate and also looking at your engagement on the website and obviously conversion.
And now I want to look at sort of expansion from the perspective of a brand that isn't subscription. David, do you think there's an opportunity for brands to create a subscription element to their offer in order to attract new customers? For instance, a cosmetics brand that sells direct to consumer using your platform to offer sample size products by subscription in order to tap into a new market.
We're seeing a lot more brands that have a regular e-commerce strategy, or sometimes a high street retailer now looking at the subscription model to tap into the upward trend, as Stelios was mentioning about the search trend around subscription, to offer some form of subscription concept, which is an entry point into their brand. It'll allow customers to sample latest releases mixed in with a few bestsellers. So it can be quite a nice entry point experience to consumers and raise a bit more brand exposure.
And thinking about it the other way around, so a subscription first business moving into other categories. Sophie, do you see potential for your brand to expand in a wholesale capacity, being stocked in supermarkets?
The real value in what we're doing is just how well we're getting to know our customer and the community that we're seeing build around our product. We're not really focusing on anything other than how much more can we be servicing our customer, and building out this community. That being said, we do see a real opportunity to go into other product lines in retail, creating more touch points with the brands in clubs, soft play, nurseries. What products can we be putting in those areas to build out our brand and be reaching families who we aren't reaching digitally? In terms of going into sort of food specific retail, it's not a focus of ours. It may be in the next 3 to 5 years.
Mike, what about you? Lots of subscription businesses start off in one product category before branching out, and you can do that in different ways.
Within the FMCG space, I guess the best example is the razor space, the Dollar Shave Club, Harry's, Cornerstone here in the UK. All of those guys offer shampoo, deodorant, some of them now condoms, erectile dysfunction treatment, hair loss treatment. On paper, when we're sitting around looking at this sort of thing, about the expansion side of things, it can seem like a good idea to expand into other categories. The danger is, as a brand, then you could lose what made you special in the first place. You get seen as being maybe something of a generalist, as opposed to a specialist within the sector or products that you originally started. There's lots of challenger brands out there. If you start dipping your toe in the water too thinly, there's going to be somebody else out there who specializes in that space, who's very, very well funded, that will just take that market share from you, and it will risk detracting away from the core of what you do. Our focus is to remain focused, if you like, on the oral care space. It's a $40 billion worldwide industry. Everyone needs a toothbrush, everyone needs toothpaste. Our challenge is different demographics, different geographical areas, if you like. Retail is an option. So to name Harry's, I think 50% of their revenue before last year was circa retail. I know lots of the mattress D2C brands eventually tipped into retail. So yes, it's certainly on the agenda. We tried dipping our toe in the water a while back. I think the timing was off. It took attention away from our core D2C proposition. So I need to make sure that we don't make that mistake again, and that when we are looking to diversify, we do it in the right way.
Thinking about international expansion, David, can businesses on your platform sell globally, or is the focus just the UK at the moment?
We would like to tap into that, but at the moment we're focusing on really developing the uOpen in the UK. We do have overseas retailers selling boxes, but that's only for UK delivery at the moment.
Some subscription boxes might contain sort of multiple categories of products which can change month to month. How would you overcome those challenges of knowing what customs and regulations are in place in different markets, and how they can manage that when they've got these different products that are in their boxes?
So we would first check the product categories. We would even check the data manifest, because actually the descriptions are as important as the product categories. In Australia, the customs have actually an automated system which flags any word related to food, animals, plants, health, supplements, etc. And it doesn't mean actually necessarily the product is restricted in Australia. It just means the description might be confusing. So, and in that case, it automatically, puts on hold the parcel at custom. Then you pay extra charges, to release the parcel from the customs. A typical example is an orange T-shirt. Orange T-shirt as a description is not orange, is not fruit, but the system will flag it as a potential risk. In Middle East, it's a booming market for the food and for baby food specifically. So that's for you, Sophie. If you want to tap this market, then a halal certification is almost compulsory, because otherwise you actually miss out on your target audience. There's lots of things to think about when you want to actually target international as well.
Lucy, what are some of the operational differences between Birchbox in the UK compared to your US counterpart?
The biggest difference is just the size of the market we have. So obviously the US is a much bigger business. Going back to the planning process we talked about earlier, needs to be a much more complex assortment, a lot more different products that need to be sourced. That in turn will create a lot more different types or variations, we call it, the boxes, versus what we do in the UK, because in order to offer a personalised experience to their amount of subscribers versus ours, it involves a lot more complexity. The landscape of US versus UK and what that means for shipping is vastly different. See, they are offering, from the shop side of things, they're offering air and ground shipping options, which is not something we need to consider in the UK. They have a lot more kind of regulations and restrictions around shipping. In the US, they actually have a kind of carrier transport manager in-house, whereas we have third-party carrier management in the UK because we just don't have that complexity in it. We don't need to have that managed in-house. In the UK, for example, I remember we launched Click and Collect a few years ago, and that's something that's just not, they'd never heard of it, just not something they're familiar with. And when we explain about going to collect from your local newsagent or your grocery shop, they can't even comprehend that, because it's just there's not the same comparison there.
As companies like Birchbox in the US, VC backed, growing really quickly, as they look to grow internationally, what do they need to consider when they're thinking about whether to service their international customers cross-border or to specifically enter and dispatch from individual markets?
Sure, it's actually a project that we're doing with our most recent new subscription client, who is a USA VC-backed company with world domination in mind. And we've got warehouses all around the world. And it's very tempting to say, right, well, I will have a warehouse in the UK and a warehouse in Amsterdam and a warehouse in Hong Kong and one in Sydney and one in the East Coast and one on the West Coast of the USA. Then I'm near all of my customers. But what you're actually doing there is introducing a lot of fixed cost. And you're also having a pot of inventory, which is essentially your cash in each of their locations. So there's got to be a tipping point to when you trip into the next phase. So you might start with one DC in your core market, fulfilling using cross-border services. And when you've got a marketing plan, then perhaps jump to the next continent. So you could start off in the USA, then come to the UK as the biggest e-commerce market, but also fulfilling to Germany, the second biggest. And then in the future, you might then trip to having a UK and an EU DC. So it's all about the tipping points between what your marketing budget is, where your customer is, and how much cash you want to have tied up in fixed costs versus the customer service of perhaps being nearer to your end user, having your product nearer to the end user.
Sometimes cross-border delivery can be faster than local deliveries. And a typical example is the US. When you actually ship from the West Coast to the East Coast, it takes longer than shipping out from the UK to the East Coast, for instance. So there's these kind of things to consider. Also the cost, but also certifications and regulations are different from a cross-border delivery point of view or local point of view as well. So there's lots of things to think about. Multiple inventories can be actually tricky, and I've seen some customers expanding and fulfilling actually locally on like 3 or 4 different key markets for them, and now they are actually reversing back and put everything under like one DC in Europe, in Amsterdam actually, and do cross-border only. So there's a lot of actually companies doing it at the moment, reversing back to one centralized fulfillment point.